employer was not able to provide all this electronic information because they deleted it, and therefore you, the jury, can safely presume that all of those communications are adverse to the employer's position. Whatever the plaintiff tells you that he thinks was in it, you can safely presume was in it because the employer can't tell you otherwise because the employer did not take the reasonable precautions to protect that information. Now, there is a rule. It's in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and it's considered the Safe Harbor Act, and it is there to protect employers. And it says that a court cannot sanction the employer where the information that was lost as a result of a routine good faith operation of an electronic information system. So you want to have an archiving method in place that is routine, and you can operate in good faith so that you keep what you would normally want to keep from an operational standpoint, delete what you don't need from an operational standpoint, and of course you're going to have to be able to establish not only is that a routine process, and that's why some information was destroyed while others was protected, you also have to show that it was done in good faith. Where you really lose good faith is when either a lawsuit has been filed or, probably more importantly, when you know a lawsuit might be filed. Now, obviously, if you have a complaint filed for sexual harassment, at that point in time, you're going to want to start protecting information that is potentially relevant to that complaint. And you're going to want to have probably some technical assistance in making sure you do that properly. It's called a litigation hold. But once you can reasonably anticipate litigation, and certainly once a lawsuit's been filed, you have an affirmative obligation to start protecting information and making sure that it is not deleted or destroyed pursuant to your normal routine process. And you want to be very careful with that. Now, having said all that, I have concluded the information I have to communicate to you, and I am going to pass it on to the folks who have much more detailed technical knowledge and much more expertise in how to make sure that information is properly archived and taken care of.
Great. Thank you, Darren, for the real-life examples of why email management is important. So at this time, I'd like to pass it over to Curtis, and he'll be talking a little bit about functional approaches and considerations for email management. Curtis, please go ahead.
Thank you. So now that we've heard some good, relevant content on why information in the legal landscape and how it's used, and on the note of routine disposal and the Safe Harbor Act, we should look at the mitigation of our risk with proper management and disposition of email content and all of our enterprise content in general. We have been focusing on email in the presentation, but we should keep in mind that email content specifically is just one type of the many types of content that our businesses generate and have. Of course, the quantity there is typically much larger, or in a lot of cases much larger. But we need to understand that the broader scope is our enterprise content management solution, and we have a number of considerations that we need to look at in order to implement and manage a ECM solution appropriately. So we'll look at a couple of slides of some of the considerations you're going to want to look at. In the scope of an ECM solution implementation, beyond the need just to create the appropriate records and retention policies, you also want to consider that you'll need governance standards for your solution, defined objectives for your ECM solution, and a roadmap to act as a plan on how and when you intend to meet those defined goals. And then, of course, part of this roadmap, you should build an ECM repository structure that fits your business. The structure I'm referring to for the ECM repository is typically modeled as part of the CIS community information security modeling that should be performed during an implementation. This would not only define the structure and the hierarchy of the repository, but also groups and group membership and the way permissions are applied to that structure. In addition, the modeling of your ECM repository would define the valuable metadata to be used. It would manage and leverage the information within your ECM system, emails and otherwise. regards to that metadata definition, the open text solution, the content server world, this is known as the categories and attributes. So in addition to considering the functional considerations, you're also going to want to look at your technical considerations. You want to consider your server system roles, the storage requirements at implementation or deployment, and then storage requirements as you plan for growth. How much content will you continue to generate on a yearly basis, and looking at your disposition policies, what you can expect that to be in the future. You also want to consider needs with the system roles in your ECM solution. Will you need system redundancy and failover or a high availability solution? Now, often is the case with email. It's low tolerance of people to have to wait for emails to be retrieved. Availability on demand is what all of our expectations are for that. And you'll also want to consider whether or not you may need load balancing as well for best performance. So a few more considerations to look at for a successful implementation is you want to look at who's responsible for the policies governing how the ECM solution, open text content server configuration should occur. This goes right along with our governance practice. Determine who is responsible for administering that technology and implementing the configuration to meet the policies that are required by the business. And you should ensure that your archival and retention policies can be implemented in practice to satisfy the business's accepted policy. You would want to do this by reviewing suggested software configuration and solutions prior to deployment with the policy owners as well as technology team members, rather than assuming a policy is met by the software. It should be evaluated and validated. And you'll also want to, the fourth point here is you'll want to ensure that email management is aligned overall with your ECM strategy and goals. Certainly the email management, as Darren's pointed out, has its own special considerations, partly due to quantity and size of that type of content, but email management content should not conflict with the management of any other types of content in your enterprise that your business generates. And keep in mind, too, that you're likely to find at a high level that the file type and the content source that of all of your content is less relevant, really, than the information itself. And determining how to manage the information will apply across the many different sources and file types that you encounter. So the way that you decide to dispose of particular information in a particular kind of email will also apply whether that item happens to be an email or a Word document or whatever it happens to be. So we're going to look at a couple of different approaches, a couple of different methodologies for email management that could suit your needs. Perhaps one of the most widely discussed now at this point is this three-zone approach that a lot of us have heard about, and the second methodology that we're going to explore is really a derivative of that three-zone method, and it's we'll call it here the simplified model approach. It's meant to be the simplified model is meant just to be a more basic implementation of the three-zone approach.